The headlights cut through sheets of October rain, illuminating something that would make Franco Padovano, a man who'd ordered 11 executions without flinching, freeze behind the wheel of his Cadillac. His 72-year-old mother was on her hands and knees on the front porch steps, gray hair plastered to her skull, arthritic fingers gripping a scrub brush while blood mixed with rainwater on the stone. Standing over her, perfectly dry under the portico, was his wife Christina, arms crossed, mouth twisted in disgust, and saying words that would seal her fate. Franco killed the engine. Rain hammered the roof like 1,000 tiny warnings he'd missed. His mother, the woman who'd worked 3 jobs in Naples to raise him alone, whose hands were so crippled by arthritis she couldn't open a jar anymore, was trembling in the freezing rain, scrubbing stone that didn't need scrubbing. And his wife, the woman he'd trusted with everything, was watching like she was enjoying it. "Lower, you lazy old woman." Christina's voice sliced through the sound of rain. "You missed a spot. Do you think I run a charity here?" This moment, this exact second, was when Franco Padovano's world split into before and after, before he knew the monster sleeping in his bed, after he saw her true face. But you need to understand how he got here. How a man who built an empire on knowing everything missed the worst betrayal happening under his own roof. Before we continue with Franco's story, I have a quick favor to ask. I spend up to 20 hours crafting each cinematic story for you to enjoy for free. However, YouTube only shares these videos if you engage. Currently, 97% of you are watching unsubscribed. If you're enjoying this journey, please take 2 seconds to hit subscribe. It costs nothing, but it's the only way this channel survives and grows. Also, comment below with your location. I love seeing our global community. Now, let's return to Franco. What happens next changes everything. 6 months earlier, on a sunny Saturday in May, Franco had carried his mother's suitcases into the guest wing of his Westchester estate and thought he was giving her paradise. Bedroom with garden views. Private bathroom with grab bars he'd installed himself. A sitting room filled with photographs of their life together. Every moment he could remember from the Bronx apartment where she'd raised him after his father abandoned them. "Franco, this is too much," Berta had whispered, touching the silk curtains like they might disappear. "I don't need all this. You need everything I can give you, Mama." He'd kissed her forehead, breathing in the scent of her lavender soap, the same cheap brand she'd used his entire childhood because it was all she could afford. Now he could buy her anything. Now he could finally repay the woman who'd gone without food so he could eat. "You carried me when I had nothing. Now I carry you." Christina had stood in the doorway during this exchange, wearing a smile that looked painted on. "Of course, darling. Your mother is always welcome here. Family is everything." Franco had missed how her jaw tightened when she said it. Missed how her eyes went flat and cold the moment he turned away. Missed everything that mattered because he was too busy building his empire to see the war starting in his own home. The first month felt perfect. Franco would come home from his nightclubs and restaurants, legitimate front for the family's less legitimate operations, and find his mother and wife cooking together, laughing in the sunroom, existing in the kind of domestic harmony he'd always wanted but never expected. Berta would tell stories about young Franco getting into fistfights with boys twice his size. Christina would laugh at all the right moments, her hand possessive on Franco's arm. But Franco didn't see what happened when his Cadillac pulled out of the driveway. Didn't see Christina dump the soup Berta had spent 4 hours making down the sink. "It tastes like poverty," she'd sneered, inches from Berta's face. "This is a refined household, not some Bronx tenement. If you're going to live here, learn to cook properly." Didn't see Berta's face crumble. Didn't see her hands shake as she started over, trying to please this woman who wore her son's ring. The cruelty started small. It always does. One comment about Berta eating too slowly at breakfast. One suggestion that maybe she'd be more comfortable taking meals in her room. One lie told with such casual confidence that it became truth. "She prefers it that way, Franco." You know how elderly people get, set in their ways. Franco had accepted this. Why wouldn't he? His wife's smile never wavered. His mother never contradicted her. Everything seemed fine on the surface, And Franco Padovano had survived in his world by trusting his instincts about people. His instincts had failed him completely. By June, Berta was eating alone in her room, cut off from the family meals she'd looked forward to. Christina had told her she was too slow, too messy for the formal dining room. "You embarrass me," she'd hissed, shaking like a leaf, dropping food. "Eat where no one has to watch you." Berta, who'd survived poverty, widowhood, and 20 years of scrubbing other people's floors to give Franco a chance at life, had simply nodded. She wouldn't burden her son. She never had. That was the promise she'd made herself the day his father left. Franco would have better. Franco would have everything she couldn't give him. Franco would never know how much it cost. So she kept Christina's secret and ate alone. July brought new horrors. Franco came home to find his mother wearing the same dress 3 days running. "Mama, where are the clothes I bought you? The designer pieces?" Berta's eyes had flickered to Christina, who was arranging flowers nearby, looking innocent as an angel. "Oh, they're being cleaned, Tesoro. Don't worry about your old mama." The truth was in a donation box at Goodwill. Christina had taken every piece Franco bought, the Versace, the Armani, the beautiful things that had made Berta cry when she first saw them, and given them away. "You don't need designer clothes," she told Berta. "You're not going anywhere. These rags are sufficient for someone who just sits around all day, leeching off my husband." Franco never knew. How could he? His mother wore a smile whenever he was home. His wife was attentive and loving. The mask held perfectly until August, when Franco's business required a week in Atlantic City. Territory negotiations with the Gambino family. Mandatory meetings that couldn't be postponed. He'd kissed Christina goodbye at dawn, reminded her about his mother's medications, and left believing his family was safe. "Take care of Mama," he'd said. "Make sure she's comfortable in this heat." "Of course, my love." Christina had purred the words against his neck. "I'll treat her like my own mother." She kept that promise in the worst possible way. The moment Franco's car disappeared down the driveway, Christina walked to the environmental controls and shut off the air conditioning to Berta's entire wing. "Electricity is expensive," she'd announced, standing in Berta's doorway like a warden. "Old people need to learn they can't waste resources. Maybe the heat will motivate you to be more useful." For 7 days, Berta lived in rooms that reached 95 degrees. She got dizzy, nauseous. Her blood pressure medication stopped working properly in the heat. She lost 8 pounds she couldn't afford to lose, her already frail body withering further. But she didn't call Franco, wouldn't interrupt his important business, wouldn't burden him with her problems. When Franco returned, tan and relaxed from a successful negotiation, he noticed his mother looked thin. "Mama, are you feeling okay?" "The heat affects my appetite," she'd said weakly, and Franco, distracted by a new territorial dispute with a rival family, had accepted this, had kissed her cheek and moved on to the next crisis, the next problem that needed solving, had missed another chance to save her. September was when Christina stopped hiding her nature entirely. Maybe she'd gotten comfortable with the power. Maybe she'd realized Berta would never tell. Maybe she simply enjoyed the cruelty too much to restrain it anymore. Franco had been called to Manhattan for a meeting with the 5 families, a sit-down to discuss territory boundaries that could last anywhere from 6 hours to 2 days, depending on how stubborn old Sal Marconi felt like being. These meetings were mandatory if you wanted to stay in the game. You showed up, you negotiated, you kept the peace, or you started a war. Franco had kissed Christina that morning, reminded her again about his mother's 2 p.m. medication, and left. Christina waited exactly 1 hour. Then she walked to Berta's room without knocking. "Get up," she said. Berta looked up from her book, confused and frightened by the tone. "Christina? Is something wrong?" "Yes, you're wrong. This whole arrangement is wrong." Christina's beautiful face twisted into something ugly, something that had been lurking beneath the makeup and smiles all along. "Do you know what you are? You're a parasite, a withered old leech sucking resources from this household." Berta's book fell from her trembling hands. I don't understand." "Of course you don't. You're too stupid and too old." Christina moved closer, predatory, feeding on the fear in Berta's eyes. "Franco built this empire. I helped him expand it, introduced him to the right people, made him respectable. And what did you do? You raised him in squalor. You gave him nothing but poverty and shame. I gave him everything I had. Berta's voice was barely a whisper. Tears were already forming. Exactly. Nothing. Christina smiled then, and it was the smile of someone who'd been waiting months to say these words. And now you sit here in your designer cage, playing the sweet old mother, reaping benefits you never earned. Well, not anymore. If you're going to live under my roof, you're going to work for it. Work? But my arthritis, the doctor said I shouldn't. I don't care about your arthritis. I don't care about your pain. I don't care about anything except making you useful for once in your pathetic life. Christina pointed toward the door. The kitchen floor needs scrubbing. Get to it. Berta stared at this woman, this stranger wearing her daughter-in-law's face. Please. Franco wouldn't want. Franco isn't here. I am. And you're going to do exactly what I say, or I'll make sure he believes you're going senile. Christina's voice dropped to a whisper. I'll tell him you're having delusions, imagining things, that you need to be put in a home, a state-run facility where they warehouse old people and forget about them. Do you want that, Berta? Do you want to die alone in a room that smells like piss and disinfectant, surrounded by strangers who don't know your name? Berta shook her head, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. Good. Then get up and start scrubbing. Berta, who'd scrubbed floors for 20 years as a cleaning woman to feed her son, who'd sworn she'd never have to do it again once Franco became successful, lowered her head and obeyed. What choice did she have? Where could she go? Her only child was Franco, and Christina held all the power when he wasn't home. She spent 4 hours on her hands and knees that day. Her joints screamed. Her fingers bled from gripping the brush. Her back spasmed from the position. But she scrubbed every inch of that massive kitchen floor, tears mixing with the soapy water, until Christina was satisfied. This became the pattern, the ritual, the new normal in Franco Padovano's house. Every time Franco left for business, Christina would find a task. Scrub the baseboards, clean the windows, polish the silver until it gleamed. Always physical labor, always designed to hurt, always chosen specifically to break Berta's arthritic hands and arthritic spirit. You tell Franco, and I'll destroy you, Christina whispered one afternoon, her breath hot against Berta's ear while the old woman polished a candlestick with bleeding fingers. I'll tell him you're imagining things, having delusions, that you're not fit to live on your own anymore. He'll believe me. I'm his wife. I'm young and beautiful and sane. You're just a confused old woman who's losing her mind. Who do you think he'll choose? Berta knew the answer, or thought she did, so she kept her mouth shut and endured. Franco noticed his mother becoming withdrawn, quieter, smaller somehow, like she was disappearing into herself. But Christina had explanations ready for every concern, every question. She's depressed, darling. It's common in the elderly. Should I spend more time with her? Take some days off. No. You're so busy. She understands. Maybe she just needs to adjust. Give it time. But time only made things worse. Time was Christina's weapon, and she wielded it expertly. By October, Berta was a ghost in her own life. She barely ate. Why bother when every meal was alone and tasteless? She barely spoke. Who would listen? She moved through the mansion like a shadow, terrified of Christina's next demand, her next cruelty, her next whispered threat. And Franco, busy with his empire and his enemies and his endless territorial disputes, missed it all. Until that rainy evening when everything shattered. Franco had told Christina he'd be home at 9 p.m. A meeting with suppliers from Philadelphia, he'd said. Important business that couldn't be postponed. But the meeting had been canceled at the last minute. One of the suppliers had gotten himself arrested on weapons charges, and the whole deal was temporarily off. Franco had decided to surprise his wife. Maybe take her to that Italian restaurant she loved in the city. Maybe spend an evening focused on her instead of business for once. He'd driven home through the rain, thinking about reservations and wine pairings and whether he should call ahead. He'd been smiling as he pulled through the iron gates. The smile died when he saw his mother on her hands and knees in the freezing rain, and his wife standing over her like an executioner. Now Franco sat in his car, frozen. listening, watching, understanding. You're pathetic, Christina was saying, her voice carrying through the rain. Look at you. Weak. Useless. Franco keeps you around out of pity, you know. He doesn't love you. He's ashamed of you, of where he came from. You're a reminder of everything he's trying to forget. Berta's shoulders shook with sobs. Rain and tears mixed on her face, indistinguishable from each other. Please, please, I'll do better. I'll scrub harder. Just let me go inside. I'm so cold. You'll go inside when I say you can go inside. When you've earned it. Now scrub. Something in Franco's chest cracked. A sound like ice breaking. Like the moment before an avalanche, when everything is still balanced on the edge between before and after. He'd killed men for less than this. Much less. Had ordered executions for disrespect that was a fraction of what he was witnessing now. But this wasn't just anyone. This was his wife. The woman he'd trusted with his home, his life, his mother's safety. The woman who'd been torturing the person he loved most in the world. Franco got out of the car slowly. The rain immediately soaked through his expensive suit, but he didn't notice. Didn't feel the cold or the wet or anything except the red haze descending over his vision. He walked toward the porch like a man moving through a dream or a nightmare. Each step measured, controlled. The way he moved right before he gave an order that would end someone's existence. Christina saw him first. Her face went white as bone. Franco, you're home early. Your mother wanted to, she insisted on. Stop. One word, quiet as a whisper, deadly as a gunshot. Berta looked up and saw her son, saw the expression on his face. Franco, no, it's not. It's my fault. I was too slow with my chores. Mama. Franco's voice was gentle now, controlled with effort. Go inside. Get warm. Right now. Berta tried to stand. Her knees had locked from kneeling so long in the cold rain. She struggled, whimpering with pain, and Franco moved to help her. That's when he saw her hands. Bloody, raw, the skin cracked and bleeding from weeks of forced labor. The same hands that had worked 3 jobs to feed him. The same hands that had held him when he cried. The same hands that had sacrificed everything so he could have the life she never would. He looked at his wife. Really looked at her for the first time in months. Inside. My office. Now. Christina's mask slipped. Fear showed in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by rage. You don't give me orders. I'm your wife, not one of your little soldiers. Franco stepped close. So close she could see the thing moving behind his eyes. The thing he usually kept locked away. The thing that had built his empire on fear and blood and absolute control. You put my mother on her knees in the rain, he said softly. You made her scrub steps with bleeding hands. I'm going to give you one chance to explain this before I decide what to do with you. Decide what to do with me. Christina's fear transformed into fury. I'm the one who made you respectable. I'm the one who introduced you to the mayor, the district attorney, all the people who made your filthy money look clean. You need me, Franco. You can't touch me. Franco looked at her, studied her, saw her clearly for the first time since they'd met, and wondered how he'd ever thought this woman was beautiful. Office. Now, or we'll have this conversation right here in the rain where the neighbors can watch. He helped his mother inside first. Got her settled in the warm kitchen with Rosa, their housekeeper, who took one look at Berta's condition and gasped. Take care of her, Franco said, his voice still controlled, still calm. Get her warm. Clean those hands. Call Dr. Russo if you need to. Then he went to his office where Christina waited, arms crossed, defiant even now. How long? Franco asked. How long what? How long have you been abusing my mother? Abusing? Christina laughed. Actually laughed. I put her to work. She was lazy, sitting around all day like some kind of queen. I gave her purpose. She has advanced arthritis. She can barely hold a pen some mornings. She managed to hold a scrub brush just fine. Franco walked to his desk, opened a drawer, pulled out a thick manila envelope. I want you to understand something, Christina. I built my organization on information. I know everything that happens in my world. Everything. What's that supposed to mean? Franco opened the envelope, pulled out photographs. Dozens of them. 8x10 glossy prints that told a story his eyes had missed, but his cameras hadn't. 6 weeks ago, I started to suspect something was wrong. My mother was losing weight. She flinched when you entered her room. She was scared of something. So I had cameras installed. Hidden cameras. Throughout the house. Christina's face went pale. You were spying on me? I was protecting my mother. Something I should have done from the beginning. Franco laid out the photographs one by one. Christina screaming in Berta's face. Christina throwing away Berta's food. Christina forcing Berta to scrub floors on arthritic hands and knees. Christina standing over her like a prison guard while an old woman bled and cried and worked. I've been watching for 6 weeks. I've seen everything. Every cruelty. Every moment of torture. I documented it all. Those prove nothing. It's a husband spying on his wife. That's illegal. My lawyers will. You have 1 hour to pack your things and leave my house. Christina stared at him. Then she laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. Nervous. Leave? Franco, don't be ridiculous. We're married. You can't just throw me out. Watch me. I'll take half of everything you own. The house. The businesses. Your precious money. My lawyers will destroy you in court. Franco smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile he used right before he explained to someone exactly how badly they'd miscalculated. We signed a prenuptial agreement, Christina. You remember? The one you barely read because you were so excited to become Mrs. Padovano. That agreement has a clause. Abuse of family members voids all claims. You get nothing. You can't prove abuse. It's your word against mine. Franco tapped the photographs. I have 6 weeks of video footage. High definition. With audio. I have testimony from Rosa, who's been documenting everything I asked her to watch for. I have medical record from Dr. Russo showing my mother's injuries, the weight loss, the trauma. You're done, Christina. You're finished. Christina's composure cracked completely. You bastard. You think you're so noble? You're a criminal, Franco. A murderer. You've destroyed lives. Killed people. And you're judging me? Yes. Franco's voice was ice. Because the people I've destroyed chose that life. They knew the risks. They played the game. My mother is a 72-year-old woman with arthritis who's done nothing but love me her entire life. And you tortured her for entertainment. So yes, I'm judging you. 1 hour. Pack your things and get out. Or I'll have you removed. The connections I gave you, the people I introduced you to, were appreciated and are now irrelevant. You're not as important as you think you are, Christina. The mayor was my contact before I met you. The DA is on 3 different family payrolls. You didn't bring me anything I didn't already have. You were just decoration. Pretty and temporary. And now you're neither. She stared at him, finally understanding she'd lost. Finally realizing the power she'd thought she had was an illusion. You'll regret this. The only thing I regret is not seeing who you really were before I married you. Now, get out of my sight. Christina left his office, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. Each step an angry staccato that echoed through the house. Franco sat at his desk, suddenly exhausted in a way he'd never felt after ordering executions or negotiating territory or surviving assassination attempts. Those were business. This was personal. This was the woman who'd shared his bed and whispered that she loved him while torturing his mother behind his back. He went to check on Berta. Found her in the kitchen, wrapped in blankets, her hands bandaged by Rosa. She looked so small, so fragile. A strong wind could blow her away. Franco, she said when she saw him, and her voice broke. Please, don't be angry with Christina. It was my fault. I was moving too slowly. I wasn't helping enough around the house. Mama, stop. Franco knelt beside her chair, took her bandaged hands as gently as he could. None of this was your fault. You understand me? None of it. I didn't want to burden you. You have so much to handle already. You could never be a burden. Never. Franco felt tears burning his eyes. He never cried. Hadn't cried since he was 10 years old, and some kids beat him up for being poor. But now the tears came anyway. Why didn't you tell me? She said you'd think I was senile, that you'd put me in a home. Franco's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. I would never. Mama, you're staying here. This is your home. Christina is leaving. Tonight. Forever. And she's never coming back. But she's your wife. She was my wife. Now she's just someone who hurt you. And people who hurt you don't get to stay in my life. Berta sobbed then. Months of fear and pain and humiliation poured out in harsh, broken sounds that tore at Franco's heart. He held her, this woman who'd sacrificed everything for him, who'd worked herself to exhaustion so he could eat, who'd loved him when he was just a skinny, angry kid from the Bronx with nothing but dreams and rage. Upstairs, they could hear Christina throwing things into suitcases, slamming drawers, breaking things out of spite. Franco didn't care. Let her rage. Let her destroy whatever she wanted. She'd be gone soon, and his mother would be safe. That was all that mattered. 53 minutes later, Christina came downstairs with 3 suitcases and a face full of smeared makeup and wild hair. This isn't over, Franco. Yes, it is. I'll destroy you. I'll tell everyone what you really are. What you really do. Franco smiled coldly. You mean you'll tell people I'm in the Mafia? Christina, everyone already knows. That's why they're afraid of me. That's why they pay me tribute. That's why I have power. But go ahead. Try to destroy me. See what happens to people who threaten my family. Something in his tone, some quality that promised pain and darkness and permanent solutions, must have gotten through because Christina actually backed up a step. You wouldn't. Test me. She didn't. Just grabbed her suitcases and left, the doors slamming behind her like a gunshot. The house felt different immediately. Lighter, cleaner, like something poisonous had been removed from the air itself. Franco had the locks changed that night, called his lawyer, and had divorce papers drawn up citing the abuse clause. Had copies of the video footage sent to his attorney with instructions that if anything happened to him or his mother, the footage would be released to every media outlet in New York. Insurance. Protection. The same way he'd protect any asset in his organization. But the real work was helping his mother heal. The next morning, Franco canceled all his meetings. Every single one. Territory disputes could wait. Business negotiations could be postponed. His capos could handle the day-to-day operations. For the first time in 15 years, Franco Padovano put business second. He made breakfast for Berta himself. Eggs and toast, simple and warm, the way she used to make for him when he was young and they had nothing. He carried the tray to her room and sat with her while she ate. Tell me what else she did, he said gently. I need to know everything so I can fix it. Slowly, haltingly, like someone confessing sins, Berta told him. About the donated clothes. About the air conditioning turned off during the heat wave. About being forced to eat alone because she was too messy for the dining room. About the constant cruelty, the daily humiliations, the systematic destruction of her dignity. With each revelation, Franco's anger grew colder and more focused. Christina had been systematic, calculated. She'd known exactly what she was doing, had enjoyed it, had fed on his mother's fear and pain like a vampire feeds on blood. Over the next few weeks, Franco set about undoing the damage. Took Berta shopping personally, buying her an entirely new wardrobe and making her try on everything, making her smile again. Had her wing renovated with better heating and cooling controls she could manage herself. Arranged for a physical therapist 3 times a week. Hired a companion, a kind woman named Maria who treated Berta with respect and dignity, who became a friend instead of a warden. Most importantly, he spent time with her. Real time. Not quick visits between meetings, but hours. Whole days sometimes. They'd sit in the garden when the weather was nice. Watch old Italian films together. Cook side by side, Franco doing the work while Berta sat at the kitchen island and told him stories from his childhood. You were such a skinny little thing, she said one evening in November, watching him make her mother's recipe for pasta fagioli. All knees and elbows and big angry eyes. You get in fights with boys twice your size. I learned from the best, Franco said, stirring the pot. You never backed down from anything. I had to be strong. For you. And now I get to be strong for you. Fair trade, Mama. Berta smiled, and Franco realized he hadn't seen her really smile. Not the scared, placating smile she'd worn around Christina, but a real smile in months. The divorce was finalized in December. Christina tried to fight the prenup, hired expensive lawyers who promised to break it. But Franco's evidence was overwhelming. Video footage, medical records, testimony from Rosa and Dr. Russo, and even a physical therapist who documented Berta's injuries. The judge took one look at the evidence and ruled in Franco's favor. Christina walked away with nothing except what she'd brought into the marriage, which wasn't much. The people she'd bragged about introducing Franco to had already distanced themselves. They knew which side to be on. They understood power and who held it. Christina's social connections evaporated overnight. Franco heard through his network that she'd moved back to her mother's house in Connecticut, that she was telling anyone who'd listened that Franco was abusive, controlling, that she was the victim. But no one who mattered believed her. The evidence told a different story. On Christmas Eve, Franco and Berta attended midnight mass at the little church in the Bronx where she'd raised him. The same church where she'd prayed every Sunday that Franco would have opportunities she never would, that he'd escape poverty, that he'd survive the violence of their neighborhood. It was the first time she'd left the house in months, but she'd wanted to go. Franco arranged for extra security, discreet men who blended into the congregation but were ready for any trouble. There was no trouble, just hymns and candlelight and the familiar comfort of ritual. After Mass, walking back to the car, Berta took Franco's arm. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what, Mama?" "For seeing, for believing me, for choosing me." She squeezed his arm with her bandaged hands. Some sons would have chosen the wife, the beautiful woman, the social connections. You chose your old mother instead. Franco stopped walking, looked down at this woman who'd given him everything, who'd loved him when he was unlovable, who'd worked herself to exhaustion so he could have opportunities she'd never had. "There was never a choice, Mama. You're my family, my real family. Blood. Everything else is just everything else." Berta's eyes filled with tears, but they were good tears this time. Healing tears. 3 months later, on a warm day in March, Franco came home from a meeting to find his mother in the garden with Maria. They were planting tomatoes, Berta directing, while Maria did the digging that Berta's hands couldn't manage anymore. "We're going to have the best tomatoes in Westchester," Berta called out when she saw him. Her voice was strong again, confident, better than anything you can buy in stores. Franco walked over, loosening his tie. "You're competing with professional farmers now. Someone has to show these Americans how real tomatoes taste." Berta's eyes sparkled with life he hadn't seen in almost a year. "Your Nana's seeds. I've been saving them for the right garden." That night, Franco sat in his office reviewing accounts. He heard laughter from the living room, his mother and Maria watching some Italian comedy show. The sound filled the house in a way Christina's presence never had. Filled it with warmth and life and the kind of family he'd always wanted but never thought he'd have. He thought about his ex-wife sometimes, about how completely she'd fooled him, about how she'd hidden her true nature behind a beautiful face and charming smile. It had been a harsh lesson, but a necessary one. Trust had to be earned. Beauty meant nothing if the soul behind it was ugly. His phone rang. One of his captains with a question about a shipment. Franco handled it efficiently, his mind already moving to the next issue, the next problem to solve. This was his life. Business and blood. Loyalty and family. Not the family you married into, but the family that raised you. The family that loved you when you had nothing to offer but love in return. He finished his work around midnight. The house was quiet. Maria had gone home hours ago. Berta was asleep in her wing, safe and warm and protected. Franco walked through the rooms Christina had once ruled, rooms that felt like his again now that she was gone. He stopped at a photograph on the mantel, him and his mother from last week, both smiling, both finally at peace. Sometimes you have to lose something to remember what matters. Sometimes you have to watch someone show you their true face before you can see clearly. Franco had lost a wife, but he'd saved his mother. He'd choose that trade every single time. In the kitchen, he found a note in Berta's shaky handwriting stuck to the refrigerator. "Tomato sauce tomorrow. The real kind. Not from a jar. Like Nana taught me. I love you, my son." Franco smiled and left the note where it was. Tomorrow they'd make sauce together. Tomorrow and all the tomorrows after that. Because family wasn't about obligation or appearances or social connections. Family was about showing up. About protecting the people who'd protected you. about choosing love over convenience. And Franco Padovano, for all his flaws and his sins and his dark profession, had finally chosen right, had finally seen the truth that had been hidden behind a beautiful face, had finally understood that the worst betrayals don't come from enemies, but from the people who share your bed and your name and your life. The rain that had exposed Christina's cruelty that October evening had washed away his blindness, had shown him what mattered, had given him back the only family that had ever truly been his. He turned off the kitchen light and went upstairs. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new problems to solve. But tonight, his mother was safe. Tonight, the monster was gone. Tonight, Franco Padovano could sleep knowing he'd protected the person who'd always protected him. Sometimes that's all a man can ask for. Sometimes that's everything. And that's how Franco Padovano learned that the cruelest monsters were the most beautiful masks. If you made it this far, you just experienced the story of a man who built an empire but almost lost what mattered most. I need to know, what was your favorite moment? Did you suspect Christina from the beginning? Did Franco wait too long to act? What would you have done in his position? Tell me in the comments right now. And tell me where you're watching from, your city, your state, your country. I want to see how far this story has reached. And if this story made you angry, made you think about the people you trust, made you remember that evil doesn't always look like evil, you need to subscribe because next week's story is about a woman who discovered her husband's secret family and the revenge she took that destroyed them all. Hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, remember, blood protects blood. Always. Thank you.